Right, perfect. Okay. So I'm going to carry on now. Apologies about that. It's a 40-minute session. I have to terminate it afterwards, and I'll have to start again. Sorry about that. Okay, just going to make sure I mute everybody. Right, okay, so as I was mentioning, the hadith, so the story goes on that the child or the person who he was, he had a kashf, he had a kind of unseen seeing, and he was sitting down to eat, and Allama Qurtubi rahmatullahi, Abu Yazid Qurtubi rahmatullahi, he says that because his mother had passed away, and he had doubts whether this experience would work or not. So what he did was that the 170,000 amount that he had read, he actually sent the sawab, he sent the reward to his mother. He sent the reward to his mother. And one day he was sitting to eat. Suddenly sorry about that. Just a minute. Yeah, suddenly he heard a cry from that person saying that my mother who was in the fire of hell, I actually saw in the fire of hell, she has now been admitted to paradise. So Abu Yazid Qurtubi rahmatullahi, he says that I understood two benefits from this. The first benefit was that by reading the kalima 70,000 times, a person's destiny can be changed. That person can be admitted into paradise. And I also understood that the person who was given this ability to see the unseen he was given a true ability, basically. Now, how could we actually implement this? What I would recommend is that if a person has passed away, then in them circumstances, every family member could read 500 times. 500 times, and inshallah, the 70,000 times that has been mentioned in this certain particular story can be acted upon, and inshallah, it will be a means of salvation for many people. And also, it would be also a good idea that a person does constant zikr of La ilaha illallah every single day, and reach that amount of 500 each day. And when you've reached that certain amount of 500 times, you can make a note in your mobile phone maybe, and then use it when required. Okay, so that was regarding the first kalima. The first kalima, again, there are many virtues out there. If you actually go onto the internet, or if you have a book on virtues of the kalima, you see many virtues. There's another virtue regarding the kalima where the Prophet ﷺ states to the nearest meaning that whosoever reads the kalima La ilaha illallah 100 times a day, that person's face will be shining like the full moon on the day of judgment. Okay, now let's move on to the second kalima. The second kalima, it's not much different to the first kalima. The only difference is that the second kalima had the words of testification. The word shahada means testification, the virtue of the kalima shahada. So the second kalima is ashhadu alla ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. The word ashhadu means I testify, testification. Because as I'll mention later on, that it's all good reading the kalima la ilaha illallah, but if a person does not have sincerity in their heart, then that person Islamically is not considered a Muslim. A person has to have sincerity in the heart as well while saying the kalima, which we'll also discuss when we come to the fifth kalima. There's a hadith which mentions regarding the virtue of this kalima, that if a person reads this kalima after completing ablution, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasuluh, and then there's an addition in the books of supplication. The dua you then read is Allahumma ja'alni min at-tawwabina wa ja'alni min al-mutatahhirin. Then the Prophet ﷺ has mentioned that on the day of judgment, this person will be given admission into any of the 8 gates of paradise. Any of the 8 gates that he wishes to enter into paradise, he may enter. So that's the virtue of the second kalima. The third kalima, known as the kalima tamjid. The third kalima, subhanallahi walhamdulillahi wa la ilaha illallah wallahu akbar wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil alil azim. The third kalima. And the third kalima is known as the kalima of glorification. This kalima is full of praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by reading this kalima regularly, a person will receive immense rewards. One hadith which is mentioned, Hazrat Hani relates that once the Prophet ﷺ paid her a visit. So she asked the Prophet ﷺ, "Oh Rasulullah, I've grown very, very old and weak. I'd like to supplicate using a dua. I'd like to supplicate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in such a way that I receive, immense amounts of rewards, because she was at her last stage of life. She wanted something that she could sit down in the comfort of her own home and supplicate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet ﷺ then mentioned that if you say Subhanallah 100 times, you will get the reward as if you have freed 100 Arab slaves. And you may or may not know that in those days, freeing a slave was one of the highest of virtue. And this is why many times in Islam itself, in the Sharia, when a person is has to carry out a form of compensation, for example, if a person has for example, broken their fast deliberately in Ramadan, then a person the first method is that a person needs to free a slave in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But because in these days, nowadays, we don't have slavery anymore. It's been abolished by the United Nations, and there are countries which are in agreement to abolishing slavery. So slavery is not really prevalent nowadays. Instead, what a person would do in them circumstances when he's broken the fast is keep 2 months of continuous fasting. So then Prophet ﷺ then further on he mentions that read Alhamdulillah 100 times. This will give you the reward of you presenting 100 horses in the path of Allah Ta'ala. And in those days, a horse was classified like you purchasing maybe a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. That's how expensive they were. In those days, horses were very, very expensive animals. And just by reading Alhamdulillah 100 times, a person receives such an immense virtue. Then the hadith then further on mentions if you say Allahu Akbar 100 times, it's like you sacrifice 100 camels in the path of Allah. Again, camels were very expensive. They were very expensive animals. And if a person reads La ilaha illallah, there is nothing that can surpass this reward, because it's the best of rewards. Just as I mentioned before with the incident of Musa alayhi salam, that if La ilaha illallah were to be placed in one part of a scale, it would outweigh everything in the world and what it actually consists of. So that was the third kalima. And as I said before, not only these kalimas need to be memorized, but the translation should also be memorized, which is in the book that you should have in front of you, the Talim al-Haq, which I did send as a PDF. The fourth kalima is La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu lahul mulku wa lahul hamdu yuhyi wa yumitu biyadihi al-khair wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. So the virtue regarding this, see, the word Tawheed doesn't just mean to have La ilaha illallah in your heart. The word Tawheed means to proclaim that Allah Ta'ala is one, to declare. And hence I've put to declare in brackets. So um, the virtue regarding this is when a person reads La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu, lahul mulku wa lahul hamdu wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir 100 times, it's as if a person has saved, a person has freed 10 slaves. Also, it's like the virtue of 100 deeds will be recording in that person's account. 100 sins will be forgiven, and also this will act as a shield from shaitan or on that day and on that night. If a person reads La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu lahul mulku wa lahul hamdu wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir 100 times, there's actually an incident where a scholar was once called to this person's house. There was a woman who was possessed by a jinn. So she called a certain scholar. The scholar came to the house, and she was basically in a lot of pain. The scholar he then started speaking to the jinn inside that person, and he said to the jinn that if you don't come out of this person, then I shall start reading certain supplications which will cause you a lot of pain. So the jinn responded by saying that whatever happens, I will not come out of this person. The scholar then said, okay, we'll come to an agreement. Why don't you enter my body instead? Enter my body, and I'd like you to come out of that person. Now, when the husband and wife they heard this, they were quite shocked. That why would the Sheikh do this? Why would Sheikh want the jinn to enter his body? So the jinn confirmed that I agree to this, and what I'll do is I'll enter your body instead, because all I want is a body to inhabit. So the scholar then said, the jinn then what he tried to do was he tried to enter the body of the scholar. But every time he tried to enter, he failed. He failed miserably. So the jinn then said, "It's impossible. I just can't enter your body." The scholar then started to shed tears. He broke down. He started crying. So the family then asked the scholar, "Why are you crying for?" The scholar said that I testify that the Prophet ﷺ has said the truth. Because day and night, every day and night, I read the fourth kalima, La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu, lahul mulku wa lahul hamdu wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir 100 times. And the hadith mentions that it shall be a shield from you and shaitan. It will be a shield from shaitan. And I now believe, even with more conviction, that shaitan cannot hit the person who reads the kalima, the fourth kalima 100 times in the morning and the evening. And the next virtue is nobody will be able to a better deed than a person who has read the fourth kalima, because the fourth kalima also includes La ilaha illallah. Now I know some of you might be saying that the fourth kalima, which is on the slide that I'm showing you, and the fourth kalima in the book is slightly different. There are different versions of the fourth kalima. Like I've mentioned, that these are kalimas which have been derived from the hadith, and scholars have been put together as statements. Right, okay. Moving on. The fifth kalima is known as the kalima raddi kufr. The kalima raddi kufr. And I think this is one of those kalimas that kids find difficult memorizing. And I do say in my classes, you can memorize them in halves. I mean, I don't mind, but it's a very important kalima. What's the importance of the kalima raddi kufr? The importance of the kalima raddi kufr, because raddi kufr means rejecting disbelief, rejecting Rejecting disbelief, yeah. So this kalima teaches the important Islamic concept of kufr, disbelief. Is a very lengthy topic. Again, I'm going to cover in detail when we come to believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and other so on topics. So what does the word kufr mean? The actual word kufr means to conceal and to hide. Because um, before mankind was created, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually took an oath. He took an oath from the whole of mankind. And we were all souls at that time. We had no body. There was no kind of celestial body. We were all souls. And at that time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took an oath from us that, believe that I am Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At that time, we all said, Bala. We all testified, Shahidana. Bala Shahidana, we testify that you are our true God. So the fact that a person has already testified in the hereafter that Allah Ta'ala is the true God, and then comes to the world after being born, and then reaches a certain age, and then rejects Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why the word kufr means hiding, because you're hiding the truth in them circumstances. So a person who denies and conceals the truth being Tawheed, that Allah Ta'ala is one, and the Prophet ﷺ is his messenger. A person, if he disregards this, a person rejects this, then a person does come out of the fold of Islam. There are different types of denial. The first type is denial and rejection, meaning a person has a disbelief in the heart. A person has disbelief in the heart. A person is disbelieving in the heart. Also, he's showing, or she is showing, that I don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't believe that Allah ta'ala is one. And I also don't believe that the Prophet is his messenger. If a person has this belief in their heart and also proclaims it, then this is kufr. A person comes out of the fold of Islam. Another example is turning away in arrogance. For example, Iblis, Shaitan. Shaitan and Iblis, his actual name before he actually became Shaitan was Azazil, according to some books. There's a narration that says there's not one place on the face of the earth where Shaitan, before he actually became Shaitan, he has actually prostrated on any part of the earth. He was a very, very great worship of Allah Ta'ala. But there's one thing he did not have, one quality he did not have, and that quality was recognizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why when he was told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bow down in front of Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, he turned away in arrogance. That's number two. That's what I'm mentioning. He turned away in arrogance, and because of his arrogance, he rejected Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's order. He rejected Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's order, and hence he became outcast, and he's been banished until the day of judgment. And the ulama do mention that the first being who was arrogant was actually Shaitan. The third type of rejecting disbelief, rejecting belief, is the kufr of hypocrisy. And hypocrisy means that a person inside is not a Muslim. A person doesn't believe in La ilaha illallah, but outwardly a person does proclaim that he's a Muslim. And again, we have many people nowadays in that situation. May Allah Ta'ala protect us from kufr. It's known as the kufr of hypocrisy, and there are signs in the hadith which are mentioned in the hadith where a person can carry signs of hypocrisy. For example, lying is a sign of hypocrisy. It doesn't mean that a person is a hypocrite, but there are certain traits that a person should avoid. And the last one, again, a lot of people are a victim of this, is the kufr of doubt. That sometimes they are Muslim by name, but inside they have disbelief. I remember one of my friends mentioning that his son used to sit in class at school next to one of his friends, and his friend who was like 14 or 15 years old, he mentioned that it's my family who are forcing me to be Muslim. Inside, I don't believe in Allah Ta'ala at all. That's the kufr of doubt. And unfortunately, nowadays, that's been kind of drilled into youngsters from a very early age in the school system, which again, needs to be tackled by asking questions at home. What have we learned today at school? Yeah, so this kalima, inshallah, by reading this kalima frequently, a person, would be protected by this belief, because it is quite a lengthy kalima. Again, the translation of the kalima is in the book, which you can look at your own time. So that was the fifth kalima. So to put it into a nutshell, aqidah, the word aqidah means belief. So it's the most important part of our iman. The five kalimas that I mentioned already, they are integral parts of the iman. A person needs to believe in most of them. If we look at the next kalima, which is known as kalima number 6, what is iman? Iman is to have faith in something and to proclaim it. To a Muslim, iman means to believe firmly in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and teachings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in a nutshell, as long as a person believes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, he proclaims or she proclaims that Allah ta'ala is one, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is believed to be the last messenger, that person's iman is complete. So iman in mujmal means iman in brief. So amantu billahi kama huwa bi asma'ihi, with all his names, wa sifati, and his qualities, wa qabiltu jami'a ahkamihi, and I accept all his commands. And the last kalima, the seventh kalima, is known as the iman mufassal, where the meaning is that I believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I believe in his angels, his books, divine books, his prophets. On the last day, I believe in a predestination, everything is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also resurrection after death. So these are the seven kalimas. Again, like I mentioned before, these are kalimas that we should memorize. We should also memorize their translation, and these are taught in the maktabs nowadays. But again, it's important to know, what these kalimas mean. And again, inshallah, in the future sessions, that's something I will go into in detail. So just to finish off, we've covered the seven kalimas. Next week we'll be covering a session on aqidah. So aqidah, the word aqidah means belief. It's the most important part of our iman. Nowadays, unfortunately, only the basic tenets of iman are taught at home, and even in the madrasas, unless you're studying at a very advanced level, a very brief kind of encounter of aqidah is taught. And again, that's one of the reasons why, again, I want to go into detail in aqidah in the first section of Talim al-Haq. And also, when a person goes into the workplace, when a person goes to university, you will definitely encounter, people who are different groups, will have different beliefs. If a person does not know what the correct belief is, a person can be pulled into different sects. And there's been many groups, there's been many incidents out there where people have been pulled to becoming a Shia, maybe a Qadiani, and different type of groups, just because that they haven't had sufficient knowledge, or they haven't been taught in the accurate manner which should be regarding belief. So many people will not go into detail. They'll think that the kind of summary of aqidah is sufficient, which is not. I remember my teacher mentioning that people will not enter paradise because of two reasons. The first reason is because their aqidah is incorrect, and the second reason is because their deeds may be of the wrong sort. They may have committed bad deeds. If a person's aqidah is incorrect, then in them circumstances, a person may not enter paradise after being admitted to hell. And if a person's deeds are incorrect, inshallah, one day, as long as that person has read La ilaha illallah, as I mentioned on the first slide, Man qala la ilaha illallah dakhala al-jannah, whosoever proclaims from the heart that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, that person will enter paradise. Many of the resources that I've used um, to create detail, to put detail into these sessions is from a book called Aqidah Tahawiyya. Books on Aqidah are out there, but which books have the kind of correct detail? That's the question to be answered. Um, I'm going to end the session here. Inshallah, next week we look at the beliefs of in what a person should believe in regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And hopefully then we'll also cover some content on what are the beliefs of the Shias, what are the beliefs of the Qadianis, etc., so that we have a good understanding of what the correct belief should be for a Muslim. I hope you've benefited from this session. May Allah Ta'ala accept this, and inshallah, I will see you next week. Jazakallah for your time. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to text me, and inshallah, I will try my best to answer your questions at a suitable time. Jazakallah for your time. Okay, Assalamu alaikum.